All right, welcome back. Yes, indeed. Edgar Amos is the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Adamawa State. He joins us virtually this morning. Good morning, and thank you for joining us on the program today. Now,
very good morning.
Yes, indeed. I know that the party may be, of course, you'll be upbeat concerning that decision that went in your favor, but that's one arm of it, because the candidates of the SDP here did say, look, at the moment, he's going to appeal because the judgment seemed to him to be glaringly awash with contradictions and clearly defective. To him, it's immaterial who wins at this stage. He says that they are sure going to the apex courts. It is who wins there that really matters. Is your principal concerned about this?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it is part of the beauty of democracy that go to the polls, but there are avenues for seeking redress should you feel aggrieved, should you feel dissatisfied with the process. So I think it is quite clear. You will recall that the Adamawa state governorship election is probably one of the most widely reported. At a point, it was awash in literally every TV station and every radio house. It was controversial and so on and so forth. So it's a widely reported event, perhaps more than any governorship election in the country. So that what happened yesterday, we were glad, we were not surprised, and we thought that their lordships and the people of Adamawa State, and indeed God, are on the same page on the fact that Fintiri is the duly elected governor of Adamawa State. So we are not worried at all. And I was in the tribunal sitting yesterday. I thought the tribunal, their lordships were quite erudite in the issues they've resolved. And at a point, I think they were even almost very harsh with the words and tone that they described the petitioners. So I think that we are very comfortable and not worried at all. Absolutely not.
Well, the SDP candidate also did say that, well, their petition is different from the petitions usually filed by losing parties. So he says that the collation of results witnessed 2 sets of results announced, 2 sets of winners declared, and ensuing violence on INEC and security officials. He went on and cited sections 24, 65, 137, 149 of the Electoral Act as clear as what to do under these circumstances. And so he says, look, they also have won that case. So they abided by the rules. Their pleadings were clear and unequivocal. Their exhibit confirms their pleadings. And none of the respondents ever seemed, in his own words, to have understood our line of argument until it was too late. And so none of them led evidence in defense to their pleadings and argument. And so he thinks that there's opportunity there when they go upstairs, as they say.
Okay, let me address 2 things that the tribunal spoke about. First, starting with the fact that the petitioners submitted documents without calling any witness. And their lordship said, look, if you present documents, you should even at least bring those who are authors of those documents. So for not bringing them, it's as a worthless piece of paper. The language they used was that if you are making a plea, they use the word that pleas are like bones which need flesh and blood. And so for merely submitting documents without presenting oral witnesses so that they can be cross-examined, they say it's worthless. Another thing was that the tribunal said the petitioners did not seem to know what they wanted. For example, they said it is either that the elections were marred with corruption or not in conformity with the Electoral Act. The tribunal was now asking which one is which, because the idea of corruption and the idea of non-compliance are 2 different things. And then you have not proven who was corrupt, who was corrupted, who perpetrated the corruption. And so they felt it was just a complete waste of time. So there is clearly no cause for alarm, and I think democracy recognizes that the judiciary is one place where if you feel aggrieved, you can go to seek redress.
Well, they say that it's not yet Uhuru. Perhaps, in fact, are you sleeping with one eye open? Because, look, are you also looking forward to the Adamawa version? Because, I beg your pardon, the APC
Sorry, I didn't
petition.
Hear your last question.
The APC petition. So, I know you'll say you're equally optimistic about that one, but is it going to be as straightforward?
Sorry,
Can you hear me?
Sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Okay, let's go again. How about now? Is it better now? All right.
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you here, but can you hear us? Okay, so we'll see what.
Okay, fine. I didn't hear you very well. I had APC. I only had APC candidate. I didn't hear the other part of the question.
Yeah, I was saying that for the SDP, you may be smiling, but for that of the APC, are you as concerned?
Can you repeat the question? I'm sorry about that.
Okay, let's see if we go try from your head in there. If it's not
let me see. Maybe you'll hear my own side. The chairman was asking if you're concerned about, or you're sleeping with one eye open when it comes to the APC's petition.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I think the SDP probably had a better ground. I hope you are not. I'm not going to say something that the lawyers will say. I'm saying something that is sub judice. But if what happened with the APC candidate is anything to go by, I think no responsible citizen, no responsible Democrat will align with what Hudu did, for example. I think there was widespread condemnation of the very shameful shenanigans of Hutu. So I don't think any responsible person will want to. I think even APC members do not associate themselves with the antics and shenanigans of what transpired at the elections. So there is no reason why we should get worried about that at all.
You know, this matter of the election petition tribunals and all, there are still the arguments out there where we get to the point where elections are done once and for all. But in this case, the SDP is determined to go up to upstairs, and you say you're not concerned. So what would you be doing while you're waiting for the decision from upstairs? Would you do anything differently?
We're not waiting. We are continuing with governance. Adamawa people have given Fintiri a 4-year tenure. It has elapsed. They have renewed that confidence in him. And so he's going to continue along with that trajectory by consolidating on the gains of the past 4 years and continuing to give democracy dividends to the people of Adamawa State. Provision of infrastructural facilities, security of lives and property, education, climate change issues, ensuring that there are palliatives to mitigate the pains of subsidy removal, and so on and so forth. So the governor is concentrating on those aspects. He's not going to be distracted at all. Absolutely not. Fintiri is a grassroots politician and is a dogged fighter. At any rate, there is no serious challenge to his electoral victory. I think it's the shenanigans that went on during the 2023 elections are in the public domain. And I think that every Democrat will know that and identify with him. And I think we're even very grateful because the calmness, the confidence, the maturity with which he approached the 2023 election is quite commendable. And it's quite admirable that I think there is absolutely no reason why anybody should be concerned about what is going on at the court. One of the things the lawyers responded to at the tribunal yesterday was that the judgment enriched legal jurisprudence. There are lessons, there are very profound pronouncements by their lordships, which will enhance legal judgments in the future. So these are some of the benefits. So I think even if they go all the way to the Supreme Court, so be it. Although at the moment I would rather appeal that maybe they should join hands and come up with ideas that will move Adamawa State forward. But should they go to the Supreme Court? I think that this is part of democracy, and I think it will strengthen our democratic process. So be it.
One of the concerns that I have, and a number of people have spoken to, I'm pretty sure you're aware of it, is the fact that, after the polls, politicians will go to the courts. And in a good number of cases that cannot be ignored anymore, it will seem like it's the tribunals, the judiciary, that is pronouncing the winners now and not the ballot box. Is that something that concerns you as a politician and as an active player in politics in the country? Will we ever come to a situation in this nation where it's the ballot that speaks and not just the judiciary?
I am concerned about that. However, where there are no laws, then you create an avenue for anarchy. But by and large, I wish that elections and electoral outcomes should be determined solely by the ballot box, not through judicial pronouncement. But we also think it is better that if somebody is aggrieved, he goes to the tribunal than taking the laws into his hands. But yes, I'm concerned about it.
Do you see a situation in the near or far future where what happened in 2015 becomes our culture, be it at the federal or state levels, where the winner is congratulated by the person who either is a runner-up or who didn't win the election? What the former President Jonathan did. What do you see that happening even at state level across board?
I'm hopeful that that will happen. I hope it happens, and I think it will happen. And I think we should work towards that happening. That at the end of an electoral contest, I mean, after all, if you are contesting an election, you are asking people to give you the opportunity to serve them. If they decide otherwise, why should you hit up the polity because people have decided otherwise?
So how do we get there, Dr. Amos? How do we get to that point where the political class gets that message? How do we get there?
A couple of things. We need to change the political culture. The political culture of how leaders are recruited and how leaders emerge. And then we also need to develop a culture of making politics to look at an avenue for service, not for amassing wealth. And then we also need to, as it were, unite the country. A lot of the times, many of these contests are approached within the context of primordial sentiments, religion, tribe, geography, and so on and so forth. So by the time we are actually one nation or one state, where we look at issues from the prism of a united country, then we would not find political contest as an opportunity to impose our religious beliefs or our religious constituencies or our ethnic constituencies or our other micro constituencies on the polity. So by the time successive leaders deliberately enunciate policies and programs that will lead to sincere and genuine unity and unity of purpose, then the leadership process, the leadership recruitment process will be for the service of the country, not for the promotion of primordial sentiments. I think these are some of the measures that we need to look at.
Perhaps that issue is a little more concerning given that Nigeria is now 63 years old as an independent country, and we've been around for more than 100 years as a people. So for you, Nigeria is 63. We marked independence over the weekend and into yesterday. Public holiday was yesterday, just for that celebration. From where you sit, as a politician, as a professional, how far would you say we have come in terms of our oneness, the challenges of unity, and the fault lines that a good number of people exploit? You would remember the former Vice President, Yemi Osinbajo, saying that there are politicians who exploit these fault lines to their own advantage as much as could be, one of which is religion, ethnicity, and those things. How do you see us healing ourselves from those fault lines and binding the nation together as one?
Thank you very much. First of all, let me congratulate Nigeria for 63 years of independence. The tendency is to lament and be very despondent, but some of the things Tinubu said, we should kind of give us hope. We should have hope. I think for the last 63 years, it's been a story of the good, the bad, and the ugly. Here we fought the civil war, which is quite unfortunate to have brothers training their guns and shooting each other. I think that is very despicable and that is very sad. And then you also have had to go through, at the moment, experiences of insurgency, banditry, kidnapping, and all sorts of. as well as you have issues of poverty in the middle of abundance. You have a country that is highly blessed with the resources, yet a large swath of its population is wallowing in poverty. That is very sad and very unfortunate. However, we also have things that we can celebrate. At independence, we had one university. Now we have 170 universities. We've produced some of the best brains, best engineers in the world, best doctors. We've won the Nobel Prize. We've won the Olympic gold medal in football. We've conquered the world in a lot of spheres of life. So I think we have also reasons to be celebratory and then to be hopeful that the future can be better than it is. We have some of the very tech-savvy youths who are doing a lot. And I think one of the things that should give us hope is the fact that when these youths who are ICT savvy take over the country, they will perhaps overcome those prejudices that my generation and the generations that have gone before us are going through. So to answer your question, I think what we need to do is that when leaders come to office, through their actions and inactions, through the policies and programs, they must truly demonstrate that this country is one. Because a lot of the times it is the leadership that manipulate the ignorance of the poor, the ignorance of the ignorant people, and bring up all these issues of religion and so on and so forth. So it's the elite. I think the process has to start with the elite. The elite understanding that the unity of this country is critical to its future, the survival and progress and development. So to start with is the elite. And then secondly, we need to elevate merit. In appointments, merit should be the guiding principle. There should be meritocracy. People who deserve to occupy positions of leadership, of positions of profession, should be accorded based on their merits. And I think that by the time merit takes precedence over primordial sentiment, I think that succeeding generations will also follow.
Well, Dr. Amos, it's interesting that you mentioned the young people, and it was the focus of our conversation yesterday on empowering tomorrow, a new vision for Nigeria at 63. And you also spoke about an elite consensus. Is there an elite consensus agenda in Adamawa State, particularly for the youth to take their place? What's the plan? First of all, for the elite consensus that you talked about, and for the young people themselves to actually take their place in the scheme of things in Adamawa State. What's the plan? What's the feedback that the government is getting from the people in that regard?
You know, Adamawa State is a near microcosm of the larger Nigerian state in terms of diversity. We have about 80 tribes. And then we also have we have gladiators in actually every field of human endeavor, be it politics, business, academia, military, police, and so on and so forth. And so every political gladiator as well will want to carve a niche for himself and will want to build a political empire and so on and so forth. So you have those concerns. But thank God for the administration of Fintiri. He has worked hard over the last 4 years to bridge those differences. And as to plans for the youth, yes, in the policies and programs of Fintiri, he takes education very seriously. As we speak, education is free. As we speak, there is a robust school feeding program. As we speak, WAEC and NECO fees are paid by government to the tune of over 1.5 billion every year. And as we speak, government is thinking of how JAM will also come into the fray. So government is deliberately doing this because it believes that a citizenry that is educated, that is a quick way of getting out of poverty, of also understanding the socio-economic dynamics around him. So these plans, when you have an educated youth, they will be able to understand that differences are not what should divide them. That what unites us, what binds us, are stronger than what divides us. And our destiny is in the fact that we are pursuing these goals on a common front. So there are plans to galvanize the energy of the youth, the enthusiasm of the youth, and their future to be able to entrust them with the leadership of the state.
It would be good to know, Dr. Amos, what the plans are. When you say that there are plans, it would be good to know what the plans are. Because when you speak about education, a good number of people will say academic education is one thing, but then there is a need to make academic education relevant to today and the future. I mean, of course, you also spoke to the fact that we need to jumpstart or, if anything, expedite action in terms of tech skills and digital skills for young people. So in terms of human capital development, you've spoken about education and you said there is a plan. Perhaps it would be a good idea, something to give hope to the young people in Adamawa State, what these plans are, in the light of the fact that entrepreneurship is perhaps the way to go now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We even have a fully fledged Ministry for Entrepreneurship Development in Adamawa State, headed by a youth as a commissioner.
All right, Dr. Amos, can you still hear us? Okay, seems like it's a network issue that we'll definitely have to deal with right there. Dr. Amos Edgar is, as you have seen on the front, you know, on the slide, the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Adamawa State, Fintiri, speaking about sundry issues, including the outcome of the tribunal, you know, that sat on the election petitions in Adamawa State. It will be very important and necessary for people to understand what the plan for human capital development, particularly for youths in Adamawa State, you know, are, because without those plans, the issues are not just going to go away. And if we are able to instill hope, we most certainly know that even though hope is not a strategy, it is something the youth can fall back to. Chamberlain and Nota, well, the issues are still quite many. But, you know, looking at what we discussed yesterday, you know, about on empowering tomorrow, speaking to young people, it would be good to know what the specific plans of states are for their young people, being that the young people live in the states. Don't you think so, guys?
Well, you know, part of what we're also going to waiting to ask him is, yes, the government did say 5 billion, the federal government, 5 billion was going to go to the states for the distribution of palliatives and ensure that they cushion the effect of the subsidy removal. 2 billion of which has been released to the states, we understand. So let's get, I think we do have him back now with that connection. Dr. Edgar, welcome back. So yes, we know that the government had said at the time 5 billion naira was approved for states, of which 2 billion was released, we understand, to states. So tell us, did Adamawa State receive the 2 billion naira? And if you did, how much of that has been utilized and for what?
The 2 billion naira that has been, as it were, allocated to every state, as the case might be, has gone into acquiring grains for distribution to the vulnerable members of the society. As we speak, we've been able to access 55 trucks of rice. Some other quantities of maize are still coming in. And these are what has been used for, as well as fertilizer. But we've also added to that and purchased horses before the 2 billion naira issue came into the fray. So this 2 billion has gone into purchase of grains and have been distributed and are being distributed free of charge to vulnerable members of the Adamawa.
Is that the entire 2 billion naira?
That the entire 2 billion naira has gone into purchase of grains and fertilizer.
Is that what the people need? Just grains and fertilizers?
As to human needs are insatiable. But in addition to that, we have also purchased buses because the cost of transportation is directly linked to the cost of livelihood. That's not the only thing they need. But they also need those things because the most critical of all security measures of security needs is the other food security. So it is food that is the basic. And so we've provided food, and we've provided also the means of producing food.
Okay, so this grains and fertilizers perhaps will be on a short term. Now, what is, because you're not getting the buses for them to be transported to farms. They're supposed to be transported, what, to work and several other places. These people need jobs. And even if government was going to employ them, it will be a fraction of them. The government needs to create the environment so that private sector and the likes can then employ them. What is in the plan for the private sector in Adamawa State?
In terms of ease of doing business, Adamawa's indices are among the best in the country. We have received accolades for creating an enabling environment for ease of doing business. But before we get to that also, before we leave that point, I have earlier on answered that we have skills acquisition centers across the state. We have a ministry, fully fledged ministry of entrepreneurship development. We have a poverty and wealth creation agency. And so there are very robust mechanisms to ensure that not everybody is going to be employed, but those who are employable, those who have the energy and the skills are also given the opportunity to create their own employment and even employ others. So these are some of the...
Okay, I was trying to get some specifics in terms of what exactly has been done, or what will the plan be for the private sector. Are they going to have tax incentives? What specifically should they expect from the state, aside from those broad-based ease of doing business scenario?
Okay, let me take agriculture, for example. Adamawa State has 37,000 square kilometers. 74.4 is arable. And so we know we have comparative advantage. So we created what we call Adamawa Agri-Business Support Program, so that those who are in the private sector, we will even provide credit guarantee scheme for them. If they have the ideas and they are limited by funds, we have created an avenue for them, a credit guarantee scheme where they can access funds and establish businesses. We have upgraded livestock markets and grains markets and standardized them so that those of them who can engage in agribusiness can, as it were, engage in that business and be profitable. So, and agriculture is one area that we have comparative advantage in. So those who are in the business, or those who have the ability to do so, we have created an enabling environment. We have even provided funding for them as private sector players to take advantage of those incentives and engage in agribusiness.
Dr. Edgar, you know, fantastic things you've talked about again. But then the question is, many of these products, when the farmers are done with their farming and harvest them, we do know that many times most of this farm produce get lost in transit in terms of that they waste away, no market. And when they even go to the market, the prices at which they're sold at giveaway prices because the farmer just wants to let the goods go. So is the government considering maybe commodities board?
What we are trying to do, initially we had contemplated buying 10% of the grains that people harvest, because we noticed that there are some grain merchants who even go to the farm and at the farms purchase those grains. So we had contemplated the idea of buying 10% of the harvest and keeping them in case we get to the kind of situation we did this year. We are still continuing along those lines, and then so that should there be crisis like we have had in 2023, we will approach them as it were. But what we have done and what we are thinking of doing is simply that business people should know that Adamawa is the hub, is the center for agricultural business. And when they do, they should take advantage of our ease of doing business as well as the facilities we are providing for them so that they can make our farmers to make profit from their farming business, to make them move from subsistence to the area of making farming to be a business.
You know, Dr. Edgar, if I may come in here, Adamawa is the hub of agricultural business. Okay, fantastic. But then the question of the hazards, natural hazards, or yes, disasters that could happen, floods, for instance. I mean, last year there were some floods that affected a lot of the farmlands, and many farmers lost their produce. So if you're talking about let people come in and invest in agriculture in Adamawa, because Adamawa is the hub, what's the value chain? Is the government considering the process, the value chain, investing in the value chain of agriculture, or just providing the fertilizers and the grains for the people to go and farm? And yet you're talking about moving them from subsistence agriculture to commercial agriculture, where they make a living from their farm produce.
Yeah, the value chain aspect is also there. I give you an example. A lot of livestock, a lot of the livestock slaughtered in places like Lagos and Calabar come from Adamawa. So we are thinking that, okay, why don't we have investors who will come and establish standard abattoirs, do the slaughtering process here, and just transport the meat? So it makes it easier. And we're already speaking with investors along those lines. The same thing with the hides and skin. You have canneries. You have people who can process it and bring out beautiful leather products. And we are speaking with foreign and local investors in areas of establishment of abattoirs. And in the grains market, like I said, before now, there are no standards. People will say a bag of rice or maize costs 50,000, for example. What are the standards? We are now creating a means of standardizing. When you say a bag of rice, what standards you are talking about?
Okay, so could you tell us, because some accuse the state saying that these palliatives, so-called, are branded with images and then pictures adorned with that of the government or the governor, sorry, and they're being given to politicians and their cronies. Is there a template? Is there a list that has been published? Any document that people can indeed say, this is an authentic register for Adamawa State with which they are distributing these palliatives?
Yeah, before then, I think the debate as to the branding of the bag, I think is more or less academic. A person who hasn't eaten for 2 days will not bother about what brand the bag in which that rice came from. That person who is arguing about it must not be a hungry person. I think is satisfied. That's what I'm saying. But by and large, there is a very powerful committee that has been constituted that is made up of virtually every significant segment of the society. It is headed by the Secretary to the State Government. We have first-class traditional rulers. We have security agencies, the DSS, the police. We have the legislature. We have local government chairmen. We have religious leaders. We have the NUJ, and so on and so forth. And they've designed and produced the template. In terms of whether there is a register, yes, there is a register. We ourselves have issues with the register itself because it was not produced entirely by us. It's produced by officials, a mix of largely the federal government. But at least there is something to work on. Besides, since we have involved traditional rulers, they know the people in their communities. And because the committees at the state level were either it be replicated at the local government level and the ward level, we are confident it may not be perfect, but at least it is substantially in a manner that the most vulnerable in the society will be identified and given those things. So there is nothing political about it. I mean, is the governor contesting any election? There is no imminent election that is coming up. As to the photograph, look, I had cause to say that in every office in Nigeria today, you have the president's photograph, President Tinubu, whether you voted for him or not. In Adamawa State, in every office, you have the governor Fintiri's photograph, whether you voted for him or not. He's the governor of the state. So that should not be an issue as far as I'm concerned. Besides, it has its advantages.
But that's the thing. I mean, as far as you're concerned, that may be the case. But as far as it should go, they say, look, these funds doesn't belong to an individual. It's the state.
Absolutely.
And so why adorn it with pictures of the governor if it belongs to the people? It doesn't matter even if it's not contesting elections. And then they also say, just a minute, just hang on. So so are you saying that the list that you're using was developed by the federal government? That's what you're using to distribute the palliatives?
Yes. Well, I'm saying that there is a list. We are not rigidly following that list. But it is a guide. We are following what our committee is making recommendations on. because we have issues with the list.
What issues do you have with the list?
The way it was generated. The way it was generated.
How was it generated?
It was not done such a way that the relevant people who should do it have been carried along.
Who are the relevant people?
The traditional rulers. The traditional rulers, the local community leaders. So, and sometimes some of this branding has its advantages. It means you are not going to sell it in the market. So you can't sell it because people will quickly identify that this is not a market product.
So wait, how are you using, help you understand it, how are you using the list as a guide? Because you say there's a committee, you have a list that several people are coming up with now. So what role is the list playing? Why collect it in the first place if you don't want the list?
No, we're not that we are collecting, we already have it. Not that we are collecting, we already have the list. But we have issues with it because I come from a community. So I should know who are vulnerable members of my community. If in that list, I recognize that those who are captured in the list are not the real vulnerable in my community, it's very easy for me to identify. So it's very clear that we know that there are issues with the credibility of the list. So
okay, so tell us then, when you say if those on the list are not the real vulnerable people, what criteria, how do you determine vulnerability?
Now, these committees, because the committee I'm not talking about is at the center, we have asked that such committees be replicated at the local government level and at the ward level. Now, in every ward or in every local government or as the case might be in the state, these are credible people. When they come up, they say, okay, in this community, who are those who are vulnerable? You have the sick, the elderly, the poor, the women, and so on and so forth. But these are quite clearly because people come from communities. People don't drop from the sky. They come from communities that are identifiable. And there will be consensus on who and who deserve to be given. Because it is not a one-man show. And it is across political parties. In the legislature, in Adamawa or Assembly, you have people from different political parties. And they are all involved in the committees as well. So the communities, each community has its own dynamics, but they know those who are vulnerable.
Okay, so it is what? The sick, the elderly, those are the people you mentioned, that category.
The women-led households. Women-led households.
So I haven't heard any economic consideration because I can be sick, I can be elderly, and then I'm still being properly catered for by several schemes or programs or relatives. So what about how do you determine the economic consideration?
The local community will be able to establish that because the committee is not only at the state level, it's also at the ward level. The committee in my ward will clearly know those who are vulnerable because they are not working under anybody's dictation. Because the community where you come from, you will easily identify those who are vulnerable.
So what if the community doesn't like some people's face and they say, no, as far as we're concerned, you're not going to get anything? Just so the government will buy that.
Good luck to them. We have reports anyway. So at any rate, at the state...
Is that how it works?
My point is...
Good luck to them.
The why I'm using that word is that it is inconceivable for a community to say it does not want to help the vulnerable members of its own community. It's quite inconceivable. How will members of the community say that we don't want to help the vulnerable members of our community? It's irrational.
Well,
you know that is not...
I don't know that because, look, anything can happen. We've seen several things that we never thought was possible. They happen. So there has to be a base, a proper list, documentation that people can say, this was the criteria which is acceptable by anyone, which is not subjective, and then you can then use that list for developmental purposes. That's why we're asking for this list. And by the way, is that list published? Is it accessible to the public, whoever develops it?
For us, it is accessible. We have them. I have the list. We have the list.
No, I'm not saying government. I mean everyone. Can it be accessed by everyone? In Adamawa, for instance?
It can be accessed. Whoever wants to. You have reporters. Channels has reporters in Yola.
Where is it published?
No, I didn't say it's published. I'm just saying that it is in the offices of
No, but that's what I'm asking. Is that list made public? Who can access it? Can the members of the public access the list, and where can they find it?
When they go to the office of SOCU, so there's what they call social, I can't remember it's an acronym. So they can get to the SOCU office, the coordinator of SOCU. So should those kind of things you are alluding to happen, let channels report it. Channels can report any malfeasance in the course of the distribution.
Is the government against publishing that list? Put it online or something so everybody can you can easily publish it, because you're trying to reduce movements and not spend so much money. Why ask people then to go to an office to go access the list where you can access it on the palm of your hands?
You recall that there is a humanitarian, the federal government agency where Mrs. Aide was heading and so on and so forth. It's that office and their agents in the state that oversaw the generation of that list. So it's not an entirely state government affair. That's the point I'm trying to arrive at. So those who have access to the office can get those reports. We are not against the report, the list being published. We are not absolutely. We are for it. But we have issues with the way they have been generated. And I agree with you completely that
I heard you on that part. I mean, about that particular list, which you're not using, the one you say you're using as a guide. I'm talking about the one that is being developed by the committees or communities that you mentioned, which the state government is relying on as authentic. Is that list going to be published, and when will it be published?
What we are thinking of is we will now put in place a mechanism for generating that list so that should something like this happen, we already have a list. What we are doing is we're working with our agencies like the Adamawa State Emergency Management Agency, where they have intervened in the past. We're working with, for example, the Primary Healthcare Development Agency and the Adamawa State Insurance Management Agency. So we are using some of this data from these agencies to be able to give us a guide. So going forward, our intention is that we will be able to generate a more authentic and a more credible vulnerable people's list, so that at any time, which we can publish, by the way.
Okay, so the one you're generating now is not as authentic as you would like it to be. That's why going forward, you want to generate more authentic one, as you say.
I agree with that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I thought you said you were working with the traditional institutions.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wouldn't they know the vulnerable people in their communities better than these agencies you talk about?
In generating the new list, we will work with the traditional institutions. So we are working with them.
So just to clarify here,
so
who are you working to generate the more authentic list, social register list that you're going to publish?
Well, now that process has not taken steam. What we are doing now is just on the distribution of these palliatives. But in terms of generating a more permanent register, the process has not commenced. When we do, then we will use what these committees have done, as well as what the Adamawa State Emergency Management Agency has also done, as well as what the primary healthcare agencies have done, and then the specific body that we will now institute to generate that list.
You know, I'll take you back a little bit to that matter where we were about the agriculture thing. And I mentioned earlier the floods that happened last year, I think 2022. Before then, there were several times floods and many farmlands were lost. And this year also, the Hydrological Agency and NIMED had also predicted that there are going to be floods again. Indeed, in Abuja, for instance, the last 2 days, it's been raining like cats and dogs. What specific plans does the Adamawa State government have to ensure that maybe the flood waters are captured for irrigation, or the farmers do not lose their crops again?
Let me add another mix to it. You know, we border Cameroon Republic. There's been this dam in Cameroon.
The Lagdo Dam, yes.
And so anytime they release excess water, it also floods communities along those river banks. These are things that have happened year in, year out. And we've spoken with the federal government, and indeed, under the aegis of the Lake Chad Governors Forum, we have raised all those concerns. So although you cannot entirely predict with specificity what natural disasters will come. We have had engagements with the traditional rulers, with local government chairmen, and with officials of the state government, particularly the local government chairmen along the Benue Valley that are prone to yearly flood disasters, and have designed measures, emergency measures. We have identified public structures, especially before schools reopened. We have identified schools where we said, should floods happen in a particular place, there should be quick evacuation. And we have enlightened those who are in those communities, some of them to relocate to uplands where the risk for themselves and their families will be minimal. We have mobilized health authorities to prepare for emergency medications, because in moments like this, you have outbreaks of cholera and other diseases that are water-related or waterborne. So there are those measures, as well as trying to meet those basic needs of whoever is in an emergency situation following disasters of this nature. But by and large, there's been public enlightenment, on the likelihood of floods happening either because of the release of water from Lando Dam or because of excessive rains. These things have happened year in, year out, and emergency measures have always been put in place to ensure that people who are vulnerable are catered for should they become victims of flood and flood disasters.
Well, Dr. Amos, allow me to take you back to the issue around social welfare. Well, your principal is running his second term in office, and the social register was, drawn from the previous administration. And we've spoken with one of the fellows who headed the social welfare office under the office of the vice president. And he said, it was a very painstaking process of going as far as the ward level in the various communities all over the nation. Is this something that the government of Adamawa State was not aware of? Do you think it was just drawn up by some people and the government was not carried along in that exercise?
I'm glad you spoke to him, and that gives credence to what I had said earlier, that it's not a product of what is being generated in Adamawa State. I don't want to join issues with my brother. I think I know the person you're talking about. But the point I'm trying to address is this government has issues with the credibility of the register. That is a matter of fact. It is left to it's now our word against his. And then we now come to the specifics of why do you have issues with it and why he thinks what he did is the most credible. So we have issues with it. Fortunately, you are agreeing that, like I said earlier, there is a register. It is not as if there is no register. But I'm also emphasizing that as the government, we have issues with the credibility of the register.
That's interesting, because I'm pretty sure that you are aware of the story, all the backstory to that register, that it is powered by the World Bank or supported by the World Bank. There's some kind of partnership with the World Bank in that. So are you in any way saying that such a project backed by a global organization such as the World Bank could be so defective that they will still fund it?
Somebody cannot be in New York and claim to know Adamawa more than me, or Berlin, or wherever is decided. I concede to the best intentions to get a social register. And I give it to those who organized and drew up the register that they probably did their best. But I think you should also concede to this government the right to make observations on the register.
Well, that is
noted, and what we have
Dr. Edgar, that is noted. But the question that I'm asking is it that the government was not aware that officials of the federal government were coming to Adamawa, or any state at that, before they came up with these suggestions? Or is it the process that the state government and the federal government did not agree with?
Two things. First is the product. Because the product tested against what is on the ground has been found to have gaps. So the first on this is the product. There are communities where the list of supposed vulnerable people as presented does not tally with what is on the ground. And it is considered that had every stakeholder been carried along, that process would not have created that gap.
All right, but it still, I'm not sure that the question has been answered whether or not state government officials or state government delegates were part of the team that went to the various communities.
Frankly, and I admit that I don't have the details, but what I do know is that whether state government officials were involved or not, this particular government is questioning the credibility of the product. That is a matter of fact that I'm presenting to you.
Okay. Do you have any idea? Okay, go ahead. Please go ahead.
The point I'm saying is that, assuming it is even done entirely by state government officials, it doesn't mean that it must stick to it, even if it observes there are deficiencies in it.
Okay, the question a number of people would also be asking is whether or not the state government is questioning the credibility of this product that you call it, because some people some political affiliates or some political interests were not represented on the register because it was so transparent.
That is not what I am saying, and that is not what the position of government is. The position of government has nothing to do with partisan politics.
But that's the thing. I mean, that is not what you're saying, but that could be the assumption. So a good number of people will be wondering whether or not it's because the political interests of some elements of government were not served in the process.
I can as well say that the product may also have been generated because some people's other political interests override or overruled the generation of the list. I can also make that accusation.
Okay. Another issue that has come up, particularly concerning that issue of a social register, is that there is the register and then there is the beneficiary list. So which one is the state government questioning? The register itself or the list of beneficiaries?
I think what we are questioning is the register itself. The register itself. So
does the state government have a beneficiary list? I mean, is it the beneficiaries list that the Adamawa state government previously, in the previous, in the first term of your principle, do you have a beneficiary list?
Beneficiary of what?
Of the, the things, the products that are supposed to be given to those on the register.
By who? Oh, like what?
I don't know. You tell me.
So I want to draw your attention to the fact that over time, there have been instances when the federal government brings in certain packages, which is using the register to determine who would benefit. So the beneficiary list supposedly is generated from the register itself, which we have questioned and which we are questioning.
Okay, so given that, now that the state government is questioning that the veracity or the authenticity of that list, and the palliatives, I mean, you've spoken to that a lot, have already been given some money has been given to the state government. How then will anyone not question the process of distribution when you are still in the process of verifying the beneficiary list or the register?
The idea of removing fuel subsidy came rather abruptly, and then people were subjected to pains. And so the government now set up committees, the Adamawa state government set up committees to mitigate those pains before anything came from the federal government. So on its own, government had already thought about what it wants to do to mitigate the pains of fuel subsidy removal. So irrespective of whether there is a list or not, government as a state has already designed measures to reach the people that are most vulnerable as a result of the fuel subsidy removal. If a credible register is available, it would have enhanced it. But that this has not been there has made the committees to now take up the responsibility of trying to meet the needs of those that are vulnerable. So the committees have worked because the committees have been constituted to take care of literally every stakeholder in the society, at the state level, at the local government level, and at the world level. Whether a register exists or not, it is our belief that the committees will reach the vulnerable in the society. So maybe I should ask you, what do you think other states have done that is different from Adamawa State? Have they used the register?
It's the question that everyone should be asking, and because
since you're asking the questions, have you asked whether other states have used the social register generated by the federal government?
Well, we actually hope that we'll be able to speak with Dr. Betta Aide, because, you know, there is a verification exercise that has begun in Lagos, and she's, you know, championing that. So it leads me to the question of how Adamawa State is verifying this register.
So please ask and find out what other states have also done.
Now, I'm asking you, how is Adamawa State verifying the social register?
What we are doing now is to generate a more credible social register.
And what is the process this time around?
No, for now, our immediate concern is ensuring that the palliatives are distributed, the pains as a result of fuel subsidy removal are mitigated. We will take our time to be able to generate a more enduring, sustainable, and long-lasting social register.
Well, given the process that went into developing the first one, a good number of people will be wondering what will be different this time around that will make this and the process more methodic and more authentic to the people. So how will it be, or how is it being verified?
We will ensure that every relevant stakeholder is carried along. At the world level, the traditional rulers, the religious leaders, the community leaders, the security agencies, and the political class as well. So every stakeholder should and would be carried along, so that from every community there would be some sense of consensus on the list itself. Every member of the community will agree that truly the vulnerable members of our community are these people. It should be verifiable, and it should be authenticated and become acceptable.
All right, Mr. Edgar. So moving forward, you've said that you hope to develop a more authentic or credible list from this process, meaning, of course, there will be challenges. Hoping you talked about vulnerability being what the indices for you, if I heard you right, will be the elderly, those who are sick, and those who the communities point out or identify as, so to speak. So, but probably the economic considerations, I didn't get that part, but is that right? Did you understand you? Those were your points, weren't they?
What you missed out is I said women-led households.
Women-led households.
Yes, there are households that women are the breadwinners.
Okay. All right. We have to thank you for coming on, Dr. Edgar, and hopefully in the next 4 years we'll see what developments will come to Adamawa State. Thank you for coming on. He's the Chief of Staff to the Governor of Adamawa State. We're back in a moment. Don't go away.